December 2nd, 2015, in the city of San Bernardino, California, Rizwan Farouk and Tashfeen Malik would launch a terrorist attack, killing 14 innocent people and injuring 24 others. It was deemed the worst terrorist attack since 9/11 and was the worst mass shooting in America since the Sandy Hook shooting in 2012. The aftermath of the shooting is one that is still felt today. Islamophobia and mass hysteria, the likes of which hadn't been seen since 2001. That is, if we are to exclude the Boston Marathon bombing of 2013. After the attack, the FBI was at a loss for who it was that was responsible for this attack. No terrorist organization had taken accountability. The people who had committed said terrorist attack were American-born citizens of Pakistani descent. How and where could they have been radicalized? On December 3rd of 2015, the FBI would take over the case and the investigation, conducting hundreds of interviews and collecting 320 pieces of evidence. However, there was one piece of evidence the FBI believed could uncover all the answers that they had hoped to find, as the reason to how it is Farouk and Malik could possibly have been radicalized enough to commit this atrocity. Farouk's iPhone 5C. FBI Director Comey would tell the Senate Intelligence Committee that the phenomenon of communications going dark due to more sophisticated technology and wider use of encryption is overwhelmingly affecting law enforcement operations, including investigations into murder, car accidents, drug trafficking, and the proliferation of child pornography. Director James Comey would propose a backdoor for local law enforcement and government agencies to gain access to data from a personal iPhone if necessary, claiming that they would use it for investigation into major things like murder or even terrorism, while also noting minor things such as car accidents, showing an obvious lack of care for the way this backdoor access to phones could possibly be used in. To understand the reason for the FBI director asking for a backdoor into a personal iPhone, we have to understand the encryption of the iPhone 5C and every single iPhone following. Every phone can have a 4-digit PIN to protect outsiders from getting in. The iPhones will completely erase all the data stored on the phone if it were to pass 10 incorrect attempts, meaning all contents of the phone will be rendered inaccessible by erasing the AES key, or the Advanced Encryption Standard key, meaning that the FBI only has 10 attempts to gain access into the phone, before losing all data necessary to understanding the case of the San Bernardino shooter. If Apple were to create a backdoor into just this one iPhone and give it to the FBI, they could use that to get into any iPhone they so desire, as the data may be unique to just one device, but the way it's encrypted isn't. On the 16th of February 2016, the FBI would file an application for an order of assistance under the All Writs Act 28 U.S.C. Section 1651, essentially meaning they would be giving Apple a written command by the courts to assist the FBI. Their application was accepted within the exact same day, and with it, the court would issue a 3-page order to Apple, requiring them to assist in enabling the search of the phone by providing quote-unquote reasonable technical assistance. The court order was called in the matter of the search of an Apple iPhone seized during the execution of a search warrant on a black Lexus IS 300, California license plate number 5KGD203, and the following are excerpts from the order filed in the United States District Court, District of California. For good cause shown, it is hereby ordered that 1. Apple shall assist in enabling the search of a cellular telephone, Apple make iPhone 5C, pursuant to a warrant of this court by providing technical assistance to assist law enforcement agents in obtaining access to the data on the subject device. 2. Apple's reasonable technical assistance shall accomplish the following 3 important functions. A. It will bypass or disable the auto erase function, whether or not it has been enabled. B. It will enable the FBI to submit passcodes to the subject device for testing electronically via the physical device port, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, or other protocol available on the subject device. And it will ensure that when the FBI submits passcodes to the subject device, software running on the device will not purposefully introduce any additional delay between passcode attempts beyond what is incurred by Apple hardware. Apple's reasonable technical assistance may include, but is not limited to, providing the FBI with a signed iPhone software file, recovery bundle, or other software image file (SIF) that can be loaded onto the subject device. The SIF will be loaded and run from random access memory (RAM) and will not modify the iOS on the actual phone, the user data partition or system partition on the device's flash memory. The SIF will be coded by Apple with a unique identifier of the phone so that the SIF would only load and execute on the subject device. The SIF will be loaded via device firmware upgrade mode, recovery mode, or other applicable mode available to the FBI. Once active on the subject device, the SIF will accomplish the 3 functions specified in paragraph 2. The SIF will be loaded on the subject device at either a government facility or alternatively at an Apple facility. If the latter, Apple shall provide the government with remote access to the subject device through a computer, allowing the government to conduct passcode recovery analysis. And within the same day, as the court ordered Apple to comply, Apple's CEO Tim Cook would release a statement to Apple customers. A message to our customers. The United States government has demanded that Apple take an unprecedented step which threatens the security of our customers. We oppose this order, which has implications far beyond the legal case at hand. This moment calls for public discussion, and we want our customers and people around the country to understand what is at stake. Starting with the San Bernardino case, Tim Cook states the following. We were shocked and outraged by the deadly act of terrorism in San Bernardino last December. We mourn the loss of life and want justice for all those whose lives were affected. The FBI asked us for help in the days following the attack, and we have worked hard to support the government's efforts to solve this horrible crime. We have no sympathy for terrorists. When the FBI has requested data that's in our possession, we have provided it. Apple complies with valid subpoenas and search warrants, as we have in the San Bernardino case. We have also made Apple engineers available to advise the FBI, and we've offered our best ideas on a number of investigative options at their disposal. We have great respect for the professionals at the FBI, and we believe their intentions are good. Up to this point, we have done everything that is both within our power and within the law to help them. But now, the US government has asked us for something we simply do not have, and something we consider too dangerous to create. They have asked us to build a backdoor to the iPhone. According to the Santa Clara University, public opinion polls on the issue were split. A number of major tech firms filed amicus briefs in support of Apple. The White House and Bill Gates stood behind the FBI. February 19th, FBI motioned for Apple to comply with the court's order. I urge you to listen to their memorandum and not to skip this part. I kind of feel like this section is rather important to showing the mindset of the FBI and the courts at the time. Rather than assist the effort to fully investigate a deadly terrorist attack by obeying this court's order of February 16th, 2016, Apple has responded by publicly repudiating that order. Apple has attempted to design and market its products to allow technology, rather than the law, to control access to data, which has been found by this court to be warranted for an important investigation. Despite its efforts, Apple nonetheless retains the technical ability to comply with the order. The order does not, as Apple's public statement alleges, require Apple to create or provide a backdoor to every iPhone. It does not provide hackers and criminals access to iPhones. It does not require Apple to hack its own users or to decrypt its own phones. It does not give the government the power to reach into anyone's device without a warrant or court authorization, and it does not compromise the security of personal information. This is important for multiple reasons. The FBI states that they were not asking Apple to create a backdoor into every iPhone, knowing that a backdoor into just one phone means a backdoor into every iPhone. For another, they allege that it was not to decrypt its own phones, despite purchasing a software tool from an Israeli company that broke the iPhone's encryption security. As Apple said in their memorandum as part of their motion to vacate the court order, this is not a case about one isolated iPhone. Rather, this case is about the Department of Justice and the FBI seeking through the courts a dangerous power that Congress and the American people have withheld. The ability to force companies like Apple to undermine the basic security and privacy interests of hundreds of millions of individuals around the globe. The government demands that Apple create a backdoor to defeat the encryption on the iPhone, making its users' most confidential and personal information vulnerable to hackers, identity thieves, hostile foreign agents, and unwarranted government surveillance. While it can be said that the FBI may or may not have had good intentions of simply breaking into just one phone in order to investigate a case of terrorism, the lies and manipulations give way to a more sinister reason for why they'd want a backdoor into the phone. And even worse, as I had mentioned, the FBI would dismiss the case as they would purchase a software tool from an Israeli company that would unlock the phone by breaking the iPhone's encryption security. In their memorandum as part of their motion to vacate their own hearing, they state that an outside party demonstrated to the FBI a possible method for unlocking Farouk's iPhone. Testing is required to determine whether it is a viable method that will not compromise data on Farouk's iPhone. And that last part is what piques my interest. The testing. If you need to test it, then you will either have to do so on other iPhones or do so on the phone you're trying to break into. However, knowing that you wouldn't want to risk ruining all the data on just that one phone, you would try it on other phones, right? Essentially telling everyone that you have the power to get into any iPhone that you so desire. And on September 30th of 2017, the Associated Press would file for a Freedom of Information Act request to the FBI for records relating to an agreement with a technology vendor who assisted the FBI in unlocking the iPhone of a suspected terrorist. However, the federal court would deny the request swiftly. We don't really have to look further to find the name of the company, as in 2024, after the attempted assassination of now President Donald Trump, Celebrite, an Israeli firm that made the software the FBI used to break into the phone of the attempted shooter, is also the same company that the FBI reportedly used back in 2016 in order to break the encryption of the San Bernardino shooter's iPhone. Now, I said that this was alleged because according to the FBI and the Washington Post, a small Australian hacking firm helped them with unlocking the phone. Backtracking to their memorandum from their motion for Apple to comply, they say that they didn't intend to provide hackers and criminals access to iPhones. So, why would they rely on an Australian hacking firm? Even more interesting is that according to the Washington Post, the company that helped them with the hacking into the phone was named Azimuth Security. Finding their site, I found something interesting. It looks a bit bland. I mean, you'd expect very little of a hacking firm, but more to the point, there's seemingly nothing here on the site, and what you do find at the bottom is supposedly the owners or the team. And I did a quick reverse image search on that picture of the team, and I find it funny that a hacking firm in Australia would use a picture from a restaurant called Gola Osteria, I'm trying my best to pronounce that, which is located in New York. And their LinkedIn tells me that they have locations in Jacksonville, Florida, as well as Lane Cove, Australia. Very interesting, I say. Now, I can't confidently sit here and tell you that Azimuth isn't real without knowing that myself. But I will say that I find it curious that in the case of the shooter who attempted to assassinate Trump several years after this incident, the name Celebrite, that was mentioned back in 2016, appeared again, for gaining access into an iPhone to help the FBI. Again, you just can't trust a three-letter government agency with your information. And you can't trust them to tell you the truth either.